Hello, welcome back to Meraki Unboxed. My name's Simon Thompson, at Meraki Simon on Twitter, online, in your favorite internet places. And we are here to talk today about APIs once again. We actually had an incredibly successful podcast episode already with Tony Carmichael a little while ago, talking about APIs, and the reception to that particular episode was so strong, we thought we really must do more of this. So what we've done today is we're bringing together a group of individuals, one of whom is joining us remotely. This is a first for the podcast, folks. Let's hope it all works technically. Who are going to have a conversation about how APIs are actually being applied in the real world. In this particular case, by a service provider who is obviously very enthusiastic about the difference this can make in terms of efficiencies and so on. So I'm super excited about that. And let's go round the room and introduce everybody. I'm going to start with Nash, our special guest today. Hi, Nash. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am also fine. It's a requirement of my job. I have to be fine every day. It's just how it is. Melissa, how are you today?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. That's good. We're on a roll here, folks. And we have Nash as well. Matt as well. I've got to get the names right. Hey, Matt, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Simon?
I am still good. And Matt's joining us from the car. So we are really super advanced and interconnected today. And so what I'll do, maybe let's go around the room and do some proper introductions. Now we've established we're all fine. Folks, you already know about me, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. Nash, tell us about yourself, what you do. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up sitting in this room today.
Okay. So I currently work for an MSP and VAR that sells
What does that stand for?
VAR?
Yeah, I have no idea whether our audience has heard of these things before, so we try and keep this an acronym-free zone as much as we can.
Okay, I work at a managed services provider who is also a value-added reseller.
All right, awesome. And what about yourself? What's your own background? How did you end up in that role?
Okay, everyone in my family is IT. Most of them are programmers. I kind of wanted to do like networking, but I also wanted to do like programming.
Okay.
So
that sounds very appropriate for what we're talking about today. So how long have you been doing
like
this stuff?
Our core audience. This is wonderful.
Totally. And how long have you been doing that, Nash?
2.5 years.
Awesome. How are you finding it so far? It's good fun, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I remember I chose networking because the rest of IT drove me nuts. Like trying to fix computers, trying to fix all those little problems, having to reboot all the time or ghost the machine because you just have to start again from scratch. It's not rewarding. Networking's so much more rewarding. You can fix things. There's always an answer. And I guess developing and coding is the same, right?
I mean, yeah. There's always something that I can fix or break.
Let's hope it's more the former than the latter. Melissa, tell us about you.
Sure. My name is Melissa Allis, and I'm part of the product marketing team here at Meraki. I cover our cloud and platform products.
And how did you end up finding yourself in this role?
Good question. I've been in product marketing for a little over 2 years now. I formally started with our systems manager product line. And been at Meraki for a little over 4 years at this point. So,
wow.
Yeah. It's sort of been a
legacy.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. And Matt, tell us about you.
I'm a developer advocate with the DevNet program, and I focus specifically on the Meraki platform. But as a matter of history, I've been with Cisco for 12 years. And prior to that, I was a software engineer for a couple of small software companies. And I came into Cisco as a support engineer for companies and organizations that were integrating with Cisco platforms. So my background is more software development, and I've kind of been thrown into the deep end in networking as being part of Cisco.
I love the way it's coming together. I keep hearing this all the time. It's just it's a very exciting development, as we uncovered with Tony when we talked to him as well. Cool. Melissa, I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and maybe you could take us through a few of the things we wanted to talk about today.
Sure, absolutely. So, Nash, I'm really excited to have you on today. We just wanted to get a sense from people out in the field who are getting their hands dirty with the APIs to better understand how you came across them, what you're using them for, and maybe just how that's changed your day-to-day. Any feelings or sentiments there you want to share?
How I came across it is really easy. I went to Cisco Live
Nice.
and I saw Shay Chang present. And I was like, you can do that? I want to do that. So I went home and taught myself Python.
What did he do? What was it that enthralled you there?
Just the idea that instead of doing everything manually, I could just write a bunch of for loops and make changes across 70 organizations. Yeah, 70 organizations and like 120 networks.
So the scaling thing.
Huh. That's that's interesting. And so you had some background in coding and programming. You thought you were going to go that way.
Yeah.
This was kind of like giving you a compromise in between everyone in the family and IT and what you wanted to do. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice. How big is your team, and are you the only one using the APIs or teaching folks to get up and going with them?
We have 4 network engineers, and then I am the only scripter.
You're the pioneer.
I'm basically originating automation in this way for my company on networking.
So I have a question about that. I'm interested. How did this come about? So network, probably I'm guessing that your organization was all network engineers or for what you do in that particular space. And at some point somebody said, hey, we should look at making this more efficient and we should look at ways that we can make this automated where we can. Is that what happened? Like, what's the history there? How did your role come about, essentially?
I was that person. I was just like, this would make my life easier. I don't want to do things individually across all of these orgs, all of these networks, as we're creating new standards. I just didn't want to.
Right. So you basically spotted an opportunity, or you kind of saw that the way we were doing it was, or you were doing it was not very efficient, and we all want to make our lives easier, right? and get our jobs done faster. So you were the pioneer. Totally.
Basically.
And we have Shay at Cisco Live to thank for that.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
I have a question about the Cisco Live. Was this the past one in San Diego, Nash?
No, Orlando.
Oh, Orlando. So not this past summer, but the summer before. Okay,
Yeah.
Good to know.
Cool. So we're definitely seeing an interest or an increase in interest in our API services from both our customers and partners, but it's definitely not a universal thing that everyone is caring about, especially at different company sizes. But I'm wondering, in your opinion, Nash, are API something that all engineers should care about, especially when they're selecting a new vendor? Should they always be asking, do you have an API for that?
I think a lot of old school network engineers are not comfortable coding. They don't even think that they can write like an algorithm. They do algorithms,
Right.
but they don't think they can do that. So I know for a lot of folks, it's just not on their radar.
Yeah.
I think it might help, but convincing folks to just pick up Notepad++ and start trying something is kind of challenging. I am, however, always like, do you have an API? What can I do with it?
Yeah. That's interesting.
So there's ways you can make it relatable, I'm guessing. That's got to be the way to overcome the fear. It's like, you know how to do this. Now here's another way you could potentially do it and look at the results, I'm guessing.
Or just roll up and be like, yeah, you know that new standard thing we're doing? I just applied it to everybody, and it took me about 20 minutes, and I had to write the whole script. So
And the funny thing is that at least in some of the operating systems out there, and I think iOS, Matt will keep me honest here, but there's definitely opportunities to script and create, sets of instructions essentially for the equipment, and so it's logically there is at least some of that ability there, even if people don't recognize it as such.
Yeah, there's Paramiko. Basically, you can SSH into like traditional Cisco equipment, and then basically feed it commands or have it pull config and tell you how things are configured.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing that yet.
Right, but it's an option.
It is.
It's definitely something you can consider.
Yeah.
Cool. So how?
But what that allows you, sorry, I'll jump in there. What that allows you to do then is to combine then these APIs that are offered through Meraki, which are very exciting, with what I call traditional Cisco infrastructure and device management for things that are running iOS XE, iOS XR, and XOS, and it's kind of a very exciting world now where I call them hybrid networks, but they're really just they're just the traditional networks that we're used to using. It's just now using both a mix of Meraki and traditional Cisco infrastructure.
Nice. And so I'm curious about this whole journey for network engineers. I think this is the thing we've got to try to crack at this point. We talked about this with Tony last time around on the API topic, which is you've got a huge number in this industry of network engineers who don't think of themselves as coders. And the reality is that at some point in the future, it feels to me like it's an inevitability that the future is either going to be very simplistic GUIs, simple GUIs, better word, like we have at Meraki, or it's going to be automation driven by some coding. So what are your thoughts around how we can encourage? What do you think the industry needs to do to make it easier and more less of a barrier to entry, I guess?
I think one place to start, look at the networking degrees that you can get like from community colleges or even universities. If there's no programming in there, they're not going to feel comfortable.
Right.
Based off of one of my mentees at work who is not comfortable.
Right.
And just trying to make it seem less intimidating by breaking it down into really small pieces at first.
Into chunks, bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
What is it?
Smaller
Somebody
than
said
that.
you can't eat a whole elephant. You have to cut it up into small pieces.
Someone said that?
I don't know if that's appropriate to say anymore. Somebody said it to me on a training course once. Like, you're trying to eat the elephant. You can't eat an elephant. So you have to break it down into manageable chunks.
They're endangered, Simon. Come on.
Let's
Nobody's eating
Let's
the
find a new one,
elephants.
shall we? We'll please send your thoughts in to community.meraki.com.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we have been seeing a lot of some of our customers basically getting into programming, teaching themselves Python, trying to do anything so that they can start playing around with the API because they've been tapped on the shoulder for some critical task, like trying to integrate across their organizations, or more often than not lately, folks will go through the buying process with Meraki and start their deployment and start to realize that as streamlined as Dashboard makes everything, only a few clicks per site across even 30 sites might just be too many clicks. And to your point, Nash, that could represent 15 minutes, 20 minutes of coding to get some of that automated and make everyone's lives easier. So I think we're seeing more and more, even people without that background or the last programming they did was in high school, trying to retrain themselves a little bit so they can get up and going. And it's usually some critical thing, right, that compels them to get their hands dirty. For you, I think it was just hearing Shay say that it was possible, right, and the sort of a way that you already were leaning. But are there workflows that are pretty critical that you've used the API for, or are there cool things that you're doing with it that you're willing to share?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So one of my first big things, we standardize our alerting process.
Oh, nice.
we needed to apply that to every organization. So I figured out what the what my input would be for that, and then just for org in org list cycled through them all. Another thing I'm doing is for reasons, we need to know if Meraki devices have a static IP or... Should I keep going? Okay. All right,
sorry. I distracted. That's not fair.
So we needed to know if Meraki devices had a static IP or if they were dynamic. So I wrote a script that makes an Excel report, and I can cycle through all of our organizations, all of their networks, and it's become something that I'll hand it off to my mentee and say, check for static reservations in like Active Directory DHCP or dynamic IP assignment, and then I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Nice. See, that's smart.
And then I don't have to do it is like the resounding sentiment.
It gives him something that's good practice without being utterly mind-numbing.
Yeah.
Just,
Right, the challenge of figuring that out. I think that's one of the things I associate a lot with APIs. It's this concept that's often used in various different ways. Work smarter, not harder.
Sure.
It seems like an ideal way to sum up what we're trying to do here, is just to get better efficiencies going on things that maybe were laborious and time-consuming before, but we can make them so much more efficient.
Yeah.
Looking
That
that
makes
way. Okay, well, I think one of the interesting things which Nash touched on, we were talking about how we can bring new people into this, and Nash mentioned the the colleges and universities and the courses that are set up there, and I think that's quite a nice segue into Matt's world, which is all around sort of certifications and the more sort of training side of things that we do within Cisco more broadly. So Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about the what DevNet is? Just give us a little bit of a background on that, because I don't think we've covered that on the podcast in any detail up till now, and sort of get into the certifications and how you're working the APIs in there.
Yeah, and as Nash was talking, I was getting really excited because she's saying, I taught myself Python, and I was kind of driven to do that because I saw efficiencies in scaling out our activities by going through that process. And so that was very exciting to hear. And because that's what we're trying to do at DevNet, is to get those network engineers that have been traditionally doing things by device, traditionally doing things manually, and saying, hey, here are these interfaces available to you. And not only that, but here is some introductory material to help you understand what REST APIs are and help you understand what Python is and all of that fun stuff. So DevNet is the program for that, for developers or network engineers who are looking to become developers, and conversely for developers who are looking to become network engineers. And that ties really nicely into our new offerings that are going to be coming out in February for the DevNet certifications tied to Learning at Cisco certifications, which ideally everyone who's listening to this podcast has some familiarity with. And we have a whole host of opportunities for people to become certified in these new programmability areas. And so the first level of that is that DevNet Associate program. And that's going to cover or DevNet Associate certification. That's going to cover some of your introductory material, Python, or introductions to Python, introductions to REST APIs. But more importantly, ties into the technology specifically, and Meraki is featured as part of that. And then moving up a level, we have the specialist area, and Meraki will be part of the enterprise networking portion of that. And if you go through the enterprise networking core exam and tack on the automation specialization, you'll be both CCN, whatever the term is, right, plus DevNet specialist, plus DevNet professional. So, or I take that back. You do need to take the DevNet core exam as well, but there are quick paths now there will be in February, for people to have both sides of the coin, really. That network engineering certification that allows them to, do all their IP addressing and, access
Essentials.
lists and trunking and DHCP and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
While being able to automate those processes across, multiple organizations, multiple networks, multiple devices. And that can be done through Meraki. That can be done through those device-specific operating systems that we talked about before. So it covers the whole gamut, but Meraki will be featured across all of those exams.
Nice. So I love the way that, by the sounds of it, you're really being thoughtful about how to integrate as much as possible so that it just feels normal. It's part of the learning, and it's not this kind of separate thing that some people could opt into and others would maybe choose to avoid because they maybe think they don't need it.
Well, at DevNet, we identified maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that this is a necessary direction that the industry is going. And we really tried to tap into some of our learning areas as quickly as possible. So we've been working with Learning at Cisco for the last 3 or 4 years, if I can remember correctly, doing podcasts and webinars for them. And more importantly, we've been working really closely with Networking Academy to get our content into the younger students who are coming up through those programs that Nash talked about earlier, where this is we're trying to make this a necessary part of your networking journey, and we call it net DevOps. To understand what software developers go through, to take advantage of the efficiencies that can come from software engagement, and also, really for application developers and for the network engineers, being able to understand the nuances of each other's world can help the organizations that they work for operate more efficiently.
And I guess it's getting easier over time because this stuff is getting more and more normalized as part of regular education, right? Even outside of what we're aspiring to. I'm guessing that kids now, it's so long ago, I think all I did as far as coding was concerned was 10, print hello, 20, go to 10.
That counts.
That's basic, folks. That's basic. That's as far as my programming went. It works beautifully. I have to say, I had no bugs on that particular piece of code. But the kids now are presumably getting way more into that. Do any of you know anything about that? Like, to what extent it's being taught in schools? I really don't know myself.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Most of the people I know who are interested, they go out and they teach themselves. Doesn't matter what school does.
Right.
Yeah.
The concept, I suppose, is at least being readily talked about in schools. It's part of education in IT. I'm quite sure in this day and age. Okay, and Matt, as far as Networking Academy is concerned, that's the program that Cisco runs that's essentially introducing, I guess, all the Cisco ecosystem and world, and doing it via the networking training as well for school age kids, basically.
It's school age up through. Adult learners are encouraged to take on new activities as well. I don't know what the numbers are, but I believe the number that we were always told is there's about 1 million new students that come into Networking Academy across the world. So that is Cisco's learning experience. It's been around for, I think they're celebrating their 25-year anniversary this year or something like that, or maybe even longer. So it's a well-established, industry-recognized learning program. It ties directly into those Cisco certifications. And so just getting that the programmability content into the curriculum was a big effort for us, but then being able to then turn that over and say, all right, now we're saying people can be certified. These are Cisco recognized certifications, and put those out into the industry is really a big thing. If we look at this, Cisco hasn't really changed their certification nomenclature for the last 25 years. And now we're kind of overhauling now how certifications work. But a big portion of that is tying in these automation pieces. So we're going to see automation sections for enterprise networking. Again, we know we're talking Meraki, so that's where it sits.
Yep.
But we're going to see these things in security. We're going to see these things in cloud collaboration. We're going to see these things in data center infrastructure networking. So across all of Cisco, we're going to see this, buildup of automation, whether it's working with UCS or WebEx teams. I can start listing all of the different things that Cisco puts out there, but each and every one is starting to either has offered APIs in some way, shape, or form for the last 5 to 10 years, or is coming out with an API first notion so that people can start to do the things that Nash is talking about and automate these processes and automate the work that they're doing. So it's repeatable and robust.
Sounds like Nash. It's going to be easier to build out your team in the future. You're going to have places to send people to get more knowledge.
One hopes.
If we don't do a good job out of it, I'm out of a job. So that we're going to put all our effort into that.
I'm remembering that phrase, which I think is less controversial than the last one, which is you can lead a horse to water.
Yeah, that's what I run into. The
Horses are not endangered, right?
That's true. Horses are safe, I think, for the most part.
For the most part.
So Nash, I'm curious. You mentioned that you saw Shay Chang at Cisco Live. I'm guessing it was either in the DevNet zone or it was in a breakout session.
DevNet.
But it was DevNet. Oh, wonderful. So ding, feather in our cap on that one. And my question for you is, after that, have you used DevNet resources to succeed in your tasks of building out these scripts and building out these workflows that have leveraged the APIs?
Yeah, let me just say that scripts I found through DevNet are cited in every single script that I write. I have just grabbed chunks of code and been like, this is mine now.
That's what we want.
Reverse engineering, is that what we're talking about? Okay.
That's how you learn how to program.
I'm sure you're not alone on that one.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Matt's laugh there was so satisfied. It was almost maniacal, right?
Well, I preach this in and out almost daily. So, what I tell people is come to DevNet, take our code, this is community curated stuff. Don't start projects from scratch if you don't have to. We have automation exchange, we have code exchange, we have learning labs, we have documentation. All of that stuff is there for you to start and ramp up really quickly. Some technologies are going to be a little more complicated than others. Fortunately, Meraki is one of those ones that I think is easy for people to wrap their heads around. But it's nice to hear that we have people out in the real world doing real things with our stuff and saying, all right, I took this chunk of code that Shay wrote or Matt wrote or some of the other engineers that work in that space, and I stood on that and I did my own thing with it. I revamped it to do what I needed to do. That's what we're here for. So it's really nice to hear that out in the real world.
You're welcome.
Well, that begs the question.
Validating my career.
If there's all this cool stuff out there that you can make use of, Nash, what are you going to do next?
I need to copy switches out of one network and move them into a different one.
Okay.
So I'm writing a script for that.
Nice.
Like all of their settings.
And Matt, have you got any code for that?
I have something I'm using as a basis.
Right.
It just doesn't do it the way I want.
Okay. So it's a continuous learning process, but it's kind of fun and satisfying, I'm sure. I mean, I definitely enjoyed my time in network engineering. It was hugely rewarding to see like focused, concentrated effort, fixing problems and getting stuff working again. It feels really good, doesn't it? Matt, I think you did a great job of talking through some of the options that are available. If we've got listeners, and I'm sure we do have listeners on the podcast who are completely new, like have no clue about any of this, they're completely nervous about it, what would you say would be the sort of very starting point, the jump-off point?
So I think our learning labs really do a good job of putting people into these self-help tutorials that walk them through introductory material that something that they wouldn't have necessarily had access to previous to that. And we have these curated tracks that have learning labs that are kind of serially set up. And for anyone who's new in this space, I would say application programming for the network engineer is something that we would want to look at. And the other things for application engineers, network engineering for the application engineer is another track that I would really point people towards for getting comfortable or starting to get comfortable with the concepts of programmability.
Is there a nice, easy to remember URL that people can go to?
Of course, developer.cisco.com/learning.
Wow.
Sure.
Nailed
or
it.
even, I might even get in there with the developer hub too, the Meraki.com/developers. That should have links as well to all of our learning labs and code gen libraries and all of our example codes and things like that on our Explore page. I know we also just put together a synopsis of everything DevNet certifications on the Meraki community as well. So for folks that are listening in and don't know about our community, I definitely point you to take a look there to see what topics are being discussed. It's fully open and public. You only need to create a username or an account if you want to post on those topics. But you'll see Nash and myself and Simon in the community, so it's a great place to go. And on the Learning Hub within the Meraki community, there's a new page there on DevNet certifications. So it's a good place to go to get some more information on that as well.
Nice. I think everybody who's on this podcast will know all about the community by now. I don't think there's a single episode where I haven't mentioned it about 3 or 4 times during the top and at the end. I mean, it's definitely the vehicle we want to use to try and keep the conversation going in between these and to make sure we're getting the feedback as well on the kind of topics that we should be focused on. All right, Melissa, have you got anything else you wanted to cover today?
The last thing I want to point folks to is an upcoming webinar we have that's really focused on APIs for beginners. So no coding, no programming experience necessary. We're going to host this one on the Cisco DevNet Bright Talk channel, which is a really cool place to get more information and watch streaming content and on-demand content across Cisco technologies. We have some Meraki webinars that are already on there. Matt, I know, did a great instructional one on automation with Meraki APIs recently. So check out the Cisco DevNet Bright Talk channel. And that new upcoming webinar is scheduled for October 29th. It should go live on that channel very soon. We certainly hope folks can join live or watch it afterwards.
And I'm going to just pick you up again like I did with Matt, as that obviously the folks listening, it sounds great, but where do they go? Like, what is the URL they tap into their browser to make this happen?
The Cisco DevNet Bright Talk channel.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sounds like we need to make a URL shortener for that one. Though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's the one challenge we have, as this is audio only. There's nothing that somebody can click on, so we have to make it as easy as we can in these scenarios. All right, awesome. I think it's time we start bringing things to a close. I want to thank you all for coming in today, and of course all of you for listening and joining us on the podcast today. Just before we wrap things up, let's just do a quick round the room, see if anybody's got any sort of last suggestions, tips, ideas, stories they want to share, recommendations for podcasts that people can go to check out and learn more. Nash, take it away.
The biggest one I've got, if you want to do stuff with the API, go download Postman. It will let you walk through individual API calls, and then you can figure out like your order of operations and construct like a task list. And then once you have that, it becomes much easier to write an actual script.
So that's go.
And I was going to say, Meraki has a whole collection of for Postman, so you don't have to make your own entries. It's all there.
Nice.
Little projects you can go and play with.
Well, more just the API calls.
Okay. Nice. So we've given our listeners some homework. That's what we've done. I like it. I like it. Matt, what have you got for us? Any closing thoughts?
Nash is becoming my new favorite person,
Yeah.
so I'm really excited about
We've
this.
all made friends today.
I was mentioning those learning labs earlier, and I didn't mention the whole collection of learning labs that I wrote around Meraki. There's a Getting Started with Meraki module, and you guys can check those out, and it'll take actually what Nash mentioned about using Postman and extend the learning experience for that. So if you're not sure on how to get started with Postman or how to do that, those learning labs will help you out there. All of that content, all of the documentation, all of the code exchange items, all of the automation exchange items, all of the learning labs, blah, blah, all the stuff DevNet offers for Meraki, again, can be grabbed from developer.cisco.com/Meraki. And if you have any issues, questions, concerns, or you find a typo or you're confused about the learning labs, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at the DNAP. That's THEDENAP, and I will get back to you probably pretty quickly, because we want to make sure all that stuff is super useful and understandable for everyone out there.
Nice. And actually, I've had an idea, mostly prompted by Melissa's URL fun there. Sorry to pick on you, Melissa, but it's entirely warranted. So what we'll do is, the day we publish this podcast, we'll put a community post up with like a summary of some of the links and places to go for people to check out some of the stuff that we've talked about during the show today, and that'll be a nice easy way to avoid having to figure out where to go to get all this stuff. Because I think one of the things that's clear to me, listening to all of you talk about this stuff, is that we have so many routes that we want to help you with, so many different pathways that you can take, a lot of resources you can take advantage of. And we want you to be able to find them. Of course we do. So we'll try and make that as easy as we can possibly. So how does that sound, Melissa?
I am all for it.
Okay. All right, we have a deal. All right, we're going to wrap things up now. Thank you again very much indeed for taking time out of your day to listen to Meraki Unboxed. We do this every couple of weeks, and we try and keep this content as engaging and relevant to you as we can. That's hugely important to me, and so I really want to hear from you. If you've got any feedback for us around the content you're hearing, the level it's at, whether you'd like to talk to or hear from other people within the Meraki business or other customers and partners and developers and so on, really want to hear that. So you can do it in a couple of ways. You can reach out to me directly on Twitter at Meraki Simon. If you're not a Twitter user, then, as we have said a number of times, community.meraki.com is a wonderful place to go and find lots of friends, lots of people who are into the same kind of stuff as you, talking about this technology. And give us some feedback there. It will certainly find me, and we'll make sure that we are incorporating that as we move this thing forward. So without further ado, I'm going to wrap things up now, and we will be back in a couple of weeks. Have a great time until that happens, and see you soon on Meraki Unboxed. Bye for now.